Have you ever wondered why barns are traditionally painted red? Well, the answer goes way back to the time of the earliest American settlements. In those early days, barns weren't painted at all. Instead, American barn builders relied on a keen understanding of their environment to preserve their structures. They took into account factors like sun exposure, temperature, moisture, wind and water drainage patterns when deciding where to place and build their barns. They even used a method known as seasoning to reduce the wood's moisture content. Can you imagine the intricate knowledge and skill it required to ensure the right type of wood, in the right environment, could withstand the test of time without any paint? But as we move toward the end of the 18th century, these old-school methods started to fall out of favor. People began to seek quicker, easier alternatives to preserve their barns. The goal was to find a way to coat and seal the wood, protecting it from sunlight and moisture damage. And this is where we see the inception of a homemade solution. Farmers started making their own coating, a concoction of linseed oil, milk, and lime. This tawny oil, derived from flax seeds, dried quickly and had a decent lifespan. But it wasn't without its faults. While it offered some level of protection, it didn't shield the wood from mold. And the color? It was far from the barn red we're familiar with today. In fact, it was more of a burnt orange. So in the quest for a better way to protect their barns, farmers began making their own coating from a mix of linseed oil, milk, and lime. But it was more of a burnt orange than the barn red we know today. The battle against mold and decay led to an unexpected solution and a new color for barns. Now, let's get into the heart of the matter. As the 18th century was drawing to a close, farmers were in search of a more efficient way to preserve their barns. The old-school methods of barn planning and building, although practical and effective, were gradually falling out of favor. Farmers sought an easier way to protect their barn wood from sunlight and moisture damage, and so they began to experiment. They concocted a homemade coating, a mix of linseed oil, milk, and lime. Derived from flax seeds, linseed oil was an abundant resource, and when mixed with milk and lime, it created a coating that dried quickly and lasted a long time. But it wasn't perfect. The coating was more of a burnt orange color, and more importantly, it didn't really protect the wood from mold. Mold was a significant issue. It decayed the wood and in large quantities could pose health risks to both people and animals. The solution, as it turned out, was quite literally rust. Farmers began adding ferrous oxide or rusted iron to the linseed oil mix. The rust not only killed the mold and other types of fungi, but also gave the barn a lovely red hue. And just like that, the iconic red barn was born. As we moved into the late 19th century, mass-produced paints made with chemical pigments started to become available to most people. Even with the advent of these new paints, the color red remained a steadfast choice. It was the least expensive color, and the tradition of red barns, born out of necessity and resourcefulness, continued on. By the late 19th century, mass-produced paints made with chemical pigments became available, and red, being the least expensive, remained the most popular color for barns. A testament to the ingenuity of early American farmers, the red barn remains a beloved symbol of rural life, standing tall and proud across the landscapes of the Northeast and Midwest. While red barns are still the norm in many regions, the color of a barn can tell you a lot about its location and its history. In the Northeast and Midwest, the classic red barn remains a dominant sight, a testament to the time when red paint was the least expensive option, and rust was a novel solution to wood decay. But the story doesn't end there. For a brief period, when whitewash became more affordable than red paint, white barns started to dot the landscape. Interestingly, in areas like Pennsylvania, Central Maryland, and the Shenandoah Valley, dairy farms often had white barns, possibly due to the color's association with cleanliness and purity. Venturing into the tobacco regions of Kentucky and North Carolina, you'll find barns painted black and brown. The dark hues served a practical purpose, helping heat the barns and cure tobacco. So, the next time you see a red barn, you'll know that its color is a nod to a centuries-old tradition of